Welcome back to Cocktails with Kurt. He looks like someone who just gave me the finger, doesn't he? Well, he is. This is episode 34, and today's cocktail is Irish coffee in honor of St. Patrick's Day this week, and also because it's still early spring and cold out, and we need something to warm our hands and our insides.
Yes.
So, this is a classic cocktail.
It is. It's been around since the early 40s.
So there are a lot of variations, I imagine.
There are, of course, variations, yes.
But what are the ingredients that don't change?
The basic ingredients are coffee, Irish whiskey, thus Irish coffee, cream, and sugar. That's it. We're going to be doing. We're going to add in a little bit of grated nutmeg at the very end, but that's just because that's what we're doing.
Like a flourish.
Yes, a little flourish.
Okay. All right. So Irish whiskey is not the primary whiskey here in our house, but it certainly has its place. Mm-hmm. So we drink a lot of Scotch whiskey. Mm-hmm. What would you say is the difference, like very broadly speaking, because there's variations within Irish whiskey and within Scotch whiskey, but what are the biggest differences between those two categories of whiskey, other than obviously where they're made?
Yeah. The biggest, grossest difference is probably that Scotch whiskey generally uses peat smoke during the malting process, giving it a very distinctive flavor, and Irish whiskey doesn't.
Okay.
That's the grossest difference, and it doesn't take long to get to more nuance.
Yeah. So even though some Scotch whiskeys aren't smoky tasting, that's still the process. Mm-hmm. I think Irish whiskey is a little, I don't want to say sweeter in terms of like sugariness, but in terms of like softness and a more of a light flavor. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think part of that is because all Scotch whiskey uses malted barley. It's a requirement that it's malted barley. If you have blended Scotch whiskey, you can have other kinds of grain alcohol in there, but to be called whiskey, it must be barley, malted barley.
In Scotland. To be called whiskey in Scotland.
To be called whiskey in Scotland,
yep.
Yes.
Don't confuse people.
Irish whiskey uses malted barley sometimes, but it also will use more other grains. So that's going to be your flavor differences.
Okay. So today we have
Teeling.
Teeling. We've had this before.
We've had this before.
It's a good choice.
It's a nice whiskey. There's no question about it.
Okay, so we've already brewed the coffee, which is cooling as we speak, so let's get the show on the road.
Brewed the coffee. We have 2/3 of an ounce, or excuse me, 2/3 of a cup of coffee.
So this isn't espresso or any other type of brew, it's just plain old coffee.
Basically. It can be espresso if you want. It can be brewed coffee. It's whatever you like.
But for this purpose, that's what you did, is regular coffee?
Pretty much.
Okay.
We have 1/3 of a cup of heavy cream. We're going to do 1.5 ounces of Irish whiskey. We are going to do 1 teaspoon of just plain old white sugar.
So this is a health drink?
Of course.
Fantastic.
Health drink, yes.
All right. So talk about the typical or traditional glassware, which is not this.
Well, if you ignore the fact that it says Tea House of Ann Arbor.
Right. Which is a fantastic tea house, by the way.
Basically, the normal presentation is in a toddy mug, which means basically it's a glass mug that's heat proof.
And doesn't it generally have a stem too?
I think that is a toddy mug.
Okay.
Yes, it is stemmed, footed.
He can't say yes
holder.
to me. Okay. All right. Good. Let's make the drink.
All right. So coffee goes in. Teaspoon of sugar goes in.
And we've seen variations with a variety of different types of sugar, right? Demerara and brown sugar, and. But again, this is one of those things where it's whatever your preference is.
Mm-hmm.
I would say this is just kind of the typical. Do you want to dissolve that first, or are you going to do that with the whiskey?
I'm going to do that next. So
I would say, excuse me, this is one of those where Normally we use simple syrup as a sweetener because it's easier to dissolve, but because the coffee is hot, that aids in the
That's going to aid in the
dissolving the sugar.
dissolving process. And the simple syrup is also stored cold. So
Right.
we're already going to have a little bit of cold coming in from the
Cream.
cream. Thank you.
So this calls for whipped cream, but not the typical beat to stiff peaks.
Right.
Why is that?
I think it's so you can drink it, quite frankly.
Oh, yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're just going to dry shake it a little bit in the shaker.
And dry
all.
shaking means without ice.
Without ice.
Right, okay. I mean, obviously it's not completely dry because that is in fact a liquid, right?
Say what?
That's a liquid, clearly. So-
Yes. But
Sorry,
we've talked about dry
being
shaking
pedantic.
before.
Okay, yes, we have.
So the goal is to thicken it up, but not to stiff peaks. And then
That would be a tough call to do that method and get to stiff peaks.
yeah.
Right.
But
So tell
just
us
that little bit,
tell us why you're using the spoon.
just to slow down the pour process, so that it doesn't mix in
Ooh,
at
that looks good.
until the drinker chooses to mix it in. And all kinds of cream still left in the shaker.
Mm-hmm.
Almost a waste, but we won't waste it. And then we're going to finish this with just a little bit of fresh grated nutmeg. Right.
Oh no! Well,
Well, we're going to finish this with a little grated nutmeg on the top.
and then we're gonna fish that
And we're
puppy
gonna
out
fi-
so
we're
it
gonna
doesn't
fish
ruin
the other
whole
one out
drink.
of it.
Oh my goodness.
There we go. A little bit of grated nutmeg. Ignore the fact that a big chunk of nutmeg went whoop.
That looks fantastic.
And this is Irish coffee. And cheers. See you next time.
See you next time.